We go, as we normally do, with our Seahawks first here, who continue to move throughout not spring training. I'm getting ahead of myself here. Through free agency. So free agency kicks off here, and the Seahawks instantly add some starter caliber players. Begins on the 13th when the team signed defensive tackle Dre'Mont Jones from the Denver Broncos to a 3-year, $51 million deal. $40 million of that is guaranteed, and he gets a $20 million signing bonus. Evens out to about $10 million per year. Jones had 47 tackles, 6.5 sacks, 9 tackles for loss, and 10 quarterback hits in 13 games last year for Denver. Is often referred to as one of the hardest working, most consistent inside defensive linemen in the league over the last few years that he's been in the NFL. So that's an impact signing immediately. There's been a lot of talk about the Seahawks adding in the D-line in the draft, and they still should do that. But this is a big help already for Seattle, looking to revitalize that defensive line, be able to stop the run a lot better, be able to create some more havoc, get to the quarterback, help their secondary out a little bit. So that is a big instant impact signing made by Seattle, and part of that is made possible by Geno Smith's deal and the way that it's structured and the way that it's laid out, like we talked about last week. So that was a big deal to start free agency off. The day after, the team brought back linebacker John Radigan. They tendered an offer to the exclusive right free agent linebacker / special teams mainstay. So Radigan's mainly sort of a depth piece, a special teams guy. He comes back. That same day, the team signed defensive tackle Jarran Reed to a 2-year deal. So Reed comes back after being drafted by Seattle out of the University of Alabama. Bounced around, spent some time in Kansas City, most recently Green Bay, and now he returns home to Seattle. So again, like I mentioned, with revitalizing that defensive line, Seattle seems to be getting back to, they bring back Reed, but getting some impact along the defensive tackle spot, and beefing that up a little bit after, again, being a team that really struggled against the run last year. Most notably when they let I believe they were, I want to say the 31st worst team at running the football per yards per game last year, when they let Tampa Bay run all over them in Germany, or when the Panthers ran all over Seattle, I believe, for 200 yards. You look at Josh Jacobs, had a massive game against Seattle last year. Jacobs, one of the better backs in the league, but you get the point here. Stopping the run was not something that Seattle really could do last season. And just getting better along the defensive line is always a good thing. Getting better in the trenches is always a key aspect to the football team. And on the 16th, they did that on the other side. And when they signed guard / center Evan Brown, spent a lot of time as a rotational sort of player along the Lions offensive line, and is viewed mostly as a center by general manager John Schneider. Now, some were kind of viewing this as he's the starter now with Austin Blythe retiring. I still believe that Seattle could draft a center in this year's selections. Michael Schmitz is a guy out of Minnesota who's been getting a lot of talk, but with the way that his stock might be rising, he might not be someone that Seattle can grab with their respective picks and where they see him going. But I don't want it to seem like Brown. It's been made. Some people have made it seem like that selection is going to be your starter at center, and I'm not completely buying it yet. I think that with Gabe Jackson gone and Phil Haynes likely taking that starting spot, you're going to need depth anyway, and this is another player that's versatile for Seattle. They can move him around the line there if need be. The team also re-signed quarterback Drew Lock to a 1-year deal. It's worth $4 million, can go up to $7.5 million depending on incentives for Lock, but only about $1.7 million of it is guaranteed. So very low risk sort of deal there to bring back Lock. So Seattle keeps their quarterback room that they had last season, and that the Smith deal and the Lock signing, albeit very low risk, kind of makes it seem like Seattle won't draft a quarterback, at least decently high. But again, with little of that money being guaranteed, I still put that in the realm of possibility that maybe that can happen. Just saying maybe it's a little less likely. On the 17th, you can see here these things just keep. Seattle's been busy already in the first week. They signed linebacker Devin Bush to a one-year deal, so the former Steeler comes to Seattle. General manager John Schneider, through this past week has talked a lot about different position groups, talked about linebacker being an area of concern. And they said after this Bush deal that they are still keenly interested in signing Bobby Wagner. So this was something where I don't know if it's just sort of short-term stuff where people just want to jump on anything, but there was this idea that the Devin Bush signing meant no Bobby Wagner. It's the first week of free agency. There's a lot still that can take place. The same day, the team signed safety Julian Love to a 2-year, $12 million deal. Now, Love is an interesting signing, considering the fact that he spent a good amount of time with the New York Giants as a starter. He wore the captaincy for the Giants on defense, so that's a big deal to bring an experienced leader into this group. Seattle has a very talented safety room now with Love, with Jamal Adams. Ryan Neal has been tendered, but that's a very low tender deal, and he could be signed by somebody else or someone could match that. And then Jamal Adams obviously trying to recover from that injury and hopefully stay healthy this year to be able to contribute to that safety room. Now, there's been a lot of talk that Seattle could release Adams because of his post-June designation cap cut. I don't know about that. That'll be an I want to see Jamal Adams succeed. I really do. The injuries have been unfortunate. You saw the impact that he had with Seattle when he was healthy, and he had the sack record, I believe, for DBs that year when Seattle won the division. I want him to be successful. I really do. I know a lot of people have angst about that. There's the talk about the deal with the first-round picks. Obviously, it was a big deal to acquire Adams. It's been unfortunate. It's been unfortunate, really. But again, I just want to see them all succeed. I think Love adds a great aspect to that. Great, again, versatile player that Seattle can use around the lineup. So you want to look at it. It's funny because this applies to the Mariners as well. You don't want to look at a player as just spitting one spot. Like Evan Brown will probably play along the three inside parts of the offensive line. Julian Love will probably bounce around the secondary. So I want to keep that in mind, as we look through free agency here, especially because, again, there was worry. It was like the first few hours of free agency, some deals had been done, and people were like, oh, Seattle do something. It's like, hey, man, that Jones signing is a big deal. It's going to be a big deal, and that's something that, we'll probably look back at, during the season. So, I'm happy with the first week overall and what we've seen from Seattle. I don't know if you need to necessarily do much more. We do want to look at the losses here, or guys who decided to not come back to Seattle, guys who Seattle doesn't want to bring back. Cody Barton signed with the Washington Commanders. I said he wasn't going to be with Seattle, and I was right about that. I was kind of surprised he didn't try to sign back with the Seahawks. The team released defensive tackle Quentin Jefferson. Cutting Jefferson saved Seattle $4.49 million against the cap. So some moves there to acquire more space to bring guys in. Running back Rashad Penny decided to sign with the Philadelphia Eagles, which was an interesting move. He'll have a great offensive line to rush behind, so nothing but the best to Penny there. And then running back Travis Homer signed with the Chicago Bears. Now, those two moves of Penny and Homer going elsewhere means you've now got Walker on the roster. You've got DJ Dallas. I don't think Godwin Igwebuike is on the roster yet. So it likely means we might see another drafted running back, and you might see another veteran signed as well to this team, which is It's interesting to think about that, because it would have been great to see a 1-2 punch of Penny and Walker, but I think Penny wanted to change the scenery, and with Walker kind of taking over the league back spot, I don't know if he wanted to take that number 2 role. So interesting there, and those are your losses so far. We move over here to something that's not technically free agency related. On the 14th, the team announced its 2023 coaching staff. Not too many new moves. There's some a few players, former players on this list, and then a few new positional coaches as well. So we'll go here. Obviously, Pete Carroll remains the head coach. Defensive coordinator Clint Hurt remains in that spot. Larry Izzo still the special teams coordinator. Shane Waldron stays as offensive coordinator. Roy Anderson in the secondary. Some notable things. Andy Dickerson stays along the offensive line. That was a big deal. BT Jordan, who you can see pictured here as the pass rush specialist, has been brought on. We move over here. You can see offensive passing game quarters and wide receiver coach Sanjay Lyle is a big addition. Well, not addition. He's a big piece of that as well, and he remains on there. Trying to see Greg Olson, not former tight end Greg Olson. Greg Olson takes over as the quarterbacks coach. That was announced a few weeks ago. Assistant DB/cornerbacks coach is Sean Shedd, who you can see pictured here. Defensive assistant Nico Thorpe used to be a Seahawk as well. And then defensive assistant and D-line coach Will Tukuafa used to be a player as well. So 3 players that I can note here. I could be wrong. There could be a couple more guys who are older there that I don't recognize. But at least 3 former players is kind of interesting to note for the Seahawks there. In terms of league-related news, the only thing that really we wanted to pay attention to, because obviously with free agency starting, there's a lot of different things that have taken place across the league. But with league news, we try to keep it news that's kind of relevant to the Seahawks in the division primarily, or things that relate to the things that are at the top of the top headlines. And that we talked about the Rodgers saga. The Jets are confident that a Rodgers trade will happen. They believe that it eventually will happen. It will be sorted out. But from what I can gather and understand, and even Rodgers saying on the Pat McAfee show, is that the Packers are kind of holding that up. So we'll see if that takes place. I'm over it. If I was a Packers fan, I'd be tired. I know the 49ers did sign Javon Hargrave from the Eagles. That's a big deal. So their defensive line gets even better, which is scary. And, that's just ridiculous. So stuff like Javon Hargrave to the 49ers is why it's so key for the Seahawks to draft a guy like Michael Schmitz potentially, just so you can have a solid center position guy for years to come. Not necessarily like an Evan Brown who's a veteran, and maybe if he locks down that spot and is your starter for years to come, sure. But you don't want stopgap guys on that offensive line, especially when you're in a division with the 49ers and that defensive line. The Rams, I don't know what they're going to look like here going forward. But point being, when you plan to play your division, considering how many games are dedicated to them throughout the course of the regular season. And obviously, getting better along the trenches is always something that you want to improve upon. So that'll wrap things up for our Mariners here. Seahawks here. I'm getting ahead to myself. Perhaps it's excitement. But in case you haven't seen it, I know that the sort of announcement post went out a little bit. But part of the Circling Seattle Sports and Converge Media sports team here is going to head down to spring training starting the 21st through the 28th of March here. So the last real week of spring training, myself alongside our league photographer, Liv Lyons, will be heading down to cover the games there. We'll have obviously the game coverage and live as well. It'll be great to have those live as opposed to watching on TV, listening on the radio, or following along on MLB.com. But to have that in addition to, we're going to have a lot of content in terms of player interviews, trying to get some coach interviews as well before the season begins, a daily journal so you can follow along through our journey as that continues to progress, and potentially more there as well. So want to be able to pay attention for that, so I'm going to run this here. You want to follow us on our platforms as well as the Converge Media platform so that you can see how that all goes down as we go down to Peoria for spring training and to take that on. It's going to be a really big, fun, exciting it's an exciting journey. It's a week of being down there with the group. The roster is really sorting itself out here. More and more roster moves are made every day for the Mariners to continue to cut down to that 40-man roster, that opening day roster that we'll see for a year where, that drought is over. And now it's shooting for getting further than what they did this past year, which was, making it to the ALDS, which is no laughing matter. But you've got the boogeyman. He's gone in terms of the drought. So it's now to continue forward and go further. I know they added some key veterans. You've got a lot of interesting storylines this year on top of just the normal stuff. So it'll be a lot of fun to get that going and get down there, which is tomorrow. I head out. So we've got the little scroller going down below, so you can make sure to follow us on our socials. We also did hit 1,000 followers on Twitter. I want to talk about that later, but that's big. That's exciting. So I wanted to mention that before we really began our Mariners recap for the past week. So we'll start with our past week in games, of course. March 13th at the LA Angels, a 2-8 loss. Our player of the game, center fielder Jarred Kelenic, JK, 2 hits and 2 runs on the day. March 14th versus the KC Royals, an 8-6 win. Our player of the game, left fielder Randy Bednar. Bednar, 1 hit, 1 run, and 2 RBIs. Unfortunately, the game on the 15th against the Athletics was rained out. Yes, rained out down in Peoria. So we don't have anything for that. The Mariners did make up with it with a day game and a sort of split squad thing. The next day in the morning against the Padres, but there was no coverage of that. So that was I can't really tell you what happened there. And then March 16th versus the Giants ended in a 0-0 tie. Our player of the game, starting pitcher George Kirby. Kirby, 3 1/3 innings pitched, 4 hits allowed, no runs allowed, no walks, and 4 strikeouts on the day. Continuing those games, March 17th versus the Padres, a 10-5 win. Our player of the game, Sam Haggerty, 2 hits, 2 runs, and 1 RBI on the day. March 18th at the Cleveland Guardians, a 4-5 loss. Our player of the game, first baseman Mike Ford, 1 hit, 1 run, 1 RBI, and 1 walk. And then March 19th was actually a split squad day. Those teams playing at the same time. At the Rangers, a 2-1 loss. Our player of the game, left fielder Jarred Kelenic, 2 hits there. And the tough loss is the Mariners faced Jacob deGrom, who played in one of his first few outings, really, for the Rangers. And then the game the same day, at the same time, against the Chicago White Sox, 6-2 loss. Our player of the game, starting pitcher Robbie Ray. Ray opened the game off nice, 4 innings pitched, 2 hits allowed, no runs, 2 walks, and 9 Ks. But the bullpen did not help him out there in that loss to the White Sox. That is a great transition as we go over to our player of the week here. I went with Robbie Ray over the past week. 2 games played, 7 innings pitched total, 6 hits allowed, 1 earned run, 3 walks, and 15 strikeouts. He now has 21 Ks over 12 innings pitched this spring. It was very interesting to see in Ray's first year as a Mariner, signed a 5-year deal. I believe it was a 5-year deal. I could work to clarify that as I go on here. But, coming off of a Cy Young, there was talk about he regressed. Yes, a 5-year, $115 million. All right. Got that right. There was some regression with Ray. I know he struggled here, but in terms of his general numbers over the course of the year, he had similar numbers to his Cy Young season. He's added a new pitch. The reports have come out from camp that, he's looked even better this year, and his strikeouts have been better. So a bounce back year for Ray could put him in Cy Young contention once again. So that is something to keep a note of. That is something to keep a note of there. But it's just crazy to think that he had a regressing year when he had similar numbers to his Cy Young season. I think that some of those outings, particularly, even like the Yordan Alvarez home run against him in the ALDS, some people see that and they overreact and they put that as a sort of cover for his whole year, which shouldn't be the case. So anyway, continuing on here with some news, injury related. On the 17th of March, we found out that Dylan Moore suffered an oblique strain and will not be available for opening day. So Moore, who had already dealt with a surgery over the past year, will now miss some time and not be on the opening day roster. Not available in the opening day roster, that is, because of that oblique strain. I believe he was, I don't want to say he was in a game. Yeah, he was in batting practice and he strained it. So that's unfortunate to see, and that's tough to see. And there have been calls to find a replacement for Moore there. Moore can obviously play the infield and the outfield as well. it'll be interesting here now because the Mariners, I believe they just cut it down. We're getting closer and closer to that 40-man, but 4 players, I want to say, were just sent down to minor league camp. I can get that here for you officially. 3 pitchers. Okay, Bryce Miller was sent to minor league camp, so Bryce Miller will not be on the opening day roster. Harry Ford, minor league camp, and then Leo Rivas and Kian Wong. Okay, so we can look at the infielders here and see Jose Caballero, maybe. I mean, you've got Tommy La Stella still. Mason McCoy might hang out a little bit. I doubt Jake Shiner will. Yeah, maybe Mason McCoy or Caballero. But honestly, with La Stella there, they might just be fine without it. So, yeah, that's unfortunate to see. But again, I want to say it'll be very exciting. I mean, spring training. I don't know if I should reveal this because I might get made fun of for it, but I've tried to go down to spring training twice before this. The first year, COVID happened, and then the second year, the lockout happened. So knock on wood that nothing happens between now and tomorrow. But no, it'll be exciting to go down and be able to tell some stories, get some storylines going ahead of the season here. It'll be exciting. You know, Seattle is a baseball city. Generally a multi-sport city, obviously, but you know the support that the Mariners get when they're going is insane. Even when they're not going, just seeing the Mariners logo around. I mean, being able to have this postseason logo on the side of a hat means a lot, you know. So Mariners season is where a lot of things started for us, you know, whether that's with Converge here or a bunch of different opportunities. So, you know, looking to keep that going, go even further than we did last season, obviously, but continue to tell those stories, go more in depth than we did last season. And that starts in spring training this year, which is a big thing. So we want to continue to be excited for that. And you know, that starts tomorrow. So that'll be a lot of fun. But again, you want to make sure you want to follow us on socials, of course. We look at league notes here. The only thing that we have as the World Baseball Classic continues is that Jose Altuve was injured in the World Baseball Classic. So again, I talked about in the Seahawks league notes how we want to, in all of the league notes, we kind of keep it division related normally, or if it's like the top headlines. The Astros all-star second baseman is out indefinitely after having surgery to repair a broken thumb. So that could impact it. From what I read, the recovery is about 8 to 10 weeks. So it's not super long, but that should still impact the Astros a decent bit. They're still a great team. They will still probably finish top of the division, but it will hurt them for those weeks that Altuve is out. We look ahead here for this sort of last remaining stretch of games, starting on March 20th, today versus the Brewers at 1:10. That already has started. Let's see if we can find an update on that. We'll keep going here. On March 22nd, so they get the day off on the 21st. March 22nd versus the Dodgers is a 6:40 p.m. start. March 23rd at the Reds is a 6:05 start. And then March 24th versus the Oakland Athletics is a 6:40 start here. 0-0 bottom of the first, 2 outs. Okay. As you see here, the Mariners have a 10-win, 10-loss, 2-tie record. Yeah, 2 ties. They can do that in spring training, which is a little bit annoying. I understand. We go over here. The 25th, excuse me, is a split squad day. March 25th at the Giants facility is a 1:05 start. And then March 25th at the Diamondbacks is a 1:10 start. March 26th at the Padres is a 1:10 start as well. In terms of where you can view those, we'll give you those as well because I know that's important. Folks trying to keep along with these games. Obviously, as you can see in the bottom, you should follow us on Circling Seattle Sports to keep up with those better than live. But March 20th is radio versus the Brewers today. March 22nd, radio and TV against the Dodgers. March 23rd, radio. March 24th, radio and TV. Those split squad games, the Diamondbacks game is both radio and TV, and then the Padres game is just radio. So, unfortunately, a lot of those are on radio delay as well. So, again, the best option is the thing you see in the bottom of your screen scrolling along there. Following us on social media at Circling Seattle Sports to get that live coverage immediately to your fingertips there. Or if you're not on your phone and you're on your computer or something, will still at fingertips. So now we don't have anything storm related. I know last week. Oh no, we do actually. No, it's one thing. It's relatively minor, and it was just announced actually a few hours ago. But the Storm will be playing a preseason game against the Phoenix Mercury, May 9th, 2023 at 7 p.m. At Climate Pledge Arena. That will be a 7 o'clock start preseason game. So getting that out of the way. I know last year they only had a few preseason games, and I think one was against the Sparks and then the other was against the Mercury down in Phoenix. So again, it's going to be a real interesting way to sort of see how the season goes with this Storm team. A lot of players that the team took flyers on, and this is going to be your first chance to really get a look at those players and see what this team might be made up of. It's obviously preseason, so it doesn't mean everything. Not everybody's going to go full gas, but still a big deal, still something to note and look forward to. So that is the only thing Storm as we head over here to our Sounders. March 18th versus LAFC, a scoreless draw. Tough game, an intense game against LAFC. Our player of the match, goalkeeper Stefan Fry. Fry only had 3 saves listed, 2 diving saves and 9 recoveries, but really in this match, Fry was the difference between a win and a loss. Kept Seattle from a loss, really, is the main thing. I apologize, the whole ties thing. Had some huge saves here to come out and get the ball, and then in the 92nd minute, a big save in extra time to make sure that Seattle did not concede, and that wasn't a problem. They didn't give up that goal late, as the Sounders really couldn't find that final third there. Had some turnovers in the final third. They were the better team than LAFC in this one. They just couldn't finish it off there to put that away, unfortunately. So, I mean, there are 2 key points. They're 1 point. I don't know where I'm getting 2 from. It's 1 point here in the draw to split that. But, I mean, against this LAFC team, with the run that they've been on, obviously winning MLS Cup last season, they've had a great start this year. They're currently still in CCL. So they're really working it right now. It's a really good club down in LAFC. And to play like you did, obviously, with the way that you looked, you probably should have secured those points. But I don't think it's a bad result necessarily. I know Brian Schmetzer was not happy with it, and I can understand why. Again, with the opportunity that was on the table, early in the season, you get a clean sheet at home, likely that's a win. That's usually a win. And with the way that you started off the first few weeks, normally it would be. You'd think that you'd get more offensive production. Over the last few weeks, you've scored 0 goals. 2 weeks it is, which is disappointing. But again, this is week 4. And you're still kind of figuring things out. Ibarra is not with the club right now because of that hamstring strain. Obed Vargas just played his first match. When that happened. So I don't think it's something to worry about necessarily. But it is something to note. It is important, and it is something to keep an eye on. You just hope that doesn't continue. I know that after the loss to FC Cincinnati, there was like, we don't want to note that it looked like last year. Seattle's record on the road is something that needs to improve. I believe they're winless in their last 19 on the road. Could be wrong. I could be wrong. But it's not good, is the point. I could have made that number bigger than it was. So it's nice to have 3 clean sheets at home in 4 matches. 3 clean sheets in 3 matches at home. 3 clean sheets in 4 matches. Should be 4, with that loss to Cincinnati, but I digress. So that's a big deal. But again, I don't want this to be looked at as a failure, considering, though, that on the contrary, you should have had a goal. We have some injury news, unfortunately, in that match. It does relate to Stefan Fry, actually, and it's not his fault. Fry came out to collect a ball and kind of helped take out Jackson Reagan. In the process, Reagan suffered a bruised rib in that match, and Brian Schmetzer said that they will be getting some tests done to see what that means going forward. But yeah, so hoping that nothing too serious there for Reagan, who's been a key there for the Sounders. He's started every match for Seattle, and it's just been again. I was really high on Reagan this past year, and just continuing to hope that he grows and grows, but obviously you don't want this injury to derail him much. Big news here. On the 14th, we found out that the club has qualified for the 2025 Club World Cup. With the Club World Cup expanding its format, all CCL winners from 2021 to 2024 will have already qualified for the FIFA Club World Cup. So CF Monterrey, who won in 21, and then obviously the Sounders, who won last year, will both automatically be inserted. But the new format will feature 32 clubs, including 4 from CONCACAF, should one club win the CCL title twice in this span until 2024. Then the next best team in the FIFA rankings would qualify for the Club World Cup, with further details of the ranking system to be communicated. A cap of 2 clubs per country will be applied, which is interesting, with an exception in case more than 2 clubs from the same country win the CCL over the 4-year period. So, I don't know. It's nice that Seattle will get another shot at it after that tough loss to Al Ahly in this year's Club World Cup, but cool to look forward to. It'll be interesting to see what this roster looks like in 2025, but hey, that's still historic. I don't know any MLS team that's been to Club World Cup once besides the Sounders, let alone twice. So it's pretty good. We move over here. We've got a bunch of news about call-ups. Speaking about World Cup sort of things relating to national teams wise. On the 16th, we found out that 2 centers were called up to their respective national teams. The Seattle will have their outside wingbacks Nuhu and Alex Roldan representing their countries and missing the March 25th match. Nuhu for Cameroon and Alex Roldan for El Salvador. March 17th, Obed Vargas was called into the U.S. men's national team U20 camp. That respective camp will see them take on France, England, and Serbia in its final training camp before this summer's U20 World Cup in Indonesia. So that will be spanning from March 19th through 29th. Vargas has been fully training, participated in a preseason match with the Tacoma Defiance this past week, and then obviously, like I mentioned, he participated in the match against LAFC. On the same day, Javier Arriaga was called into the Ecuador camp. I'll continue here before I get to that note. And then March 19th, it looked like Peru might not call up forward Raul Ruiz. We then found out on the 19th that Raul Ruiz will be recalled into that camp. He'll play with Peru in international friendlies against Germany and Morocco. Seattle will be missing as many as 6 players for international duty, as Reed Becker-Willing will also called into the U19 camp for the U.S. men's national team. So there was a question about why these matches weren't, why the MLS doesn't try to avoid playing during these FIFA windows. But with the Leagues Cup taking place, it made it impossible really to avoid playing during these windows, which is unfortunate, but it's still important, to see these players represent their country. But yeah, I know that was something that was like, oh, why can't we just try to avoid this? And that's not something that Seattle or the MLS can really do. So we continue on here. Our Sounders sit at a 2-win, 1-loss, 1-draw record. Their next match is March 25th at Sporting Kansas City, which is a 5:30 p.m. start. So Seattle goes on the road for the second time this season, playing a Sporting Kansas City team that has not won this year and has really they failed. They haven't scored a goal yet, but they've only allowed 1 through those competitions. So these are important points. So again, you want to be able to stack that in the early part of the season so that you're not trying to play catch up in the middle of the season, let alone at the end of the season. So that is it for our Sounders. Well, I mean, they sit at 6 in the league in Supporters Shield standings and 3rd in the Western Conference at the moment. So Now we will head over to our Seattle Kraken segment, and it's tough right now. It's tough right now for our Kraken, so we'll get into it. Starting on March 13th versus the Dallas Stars, a 5-2 loss. Our player of the game, defenseman Vince Dunn, 2 assists and 2 points. Vince continues his point streak there as Seattle celebrates Pride Night, but unfortunately Seattle unable to keep up with that talented Stars offensive roster. Our photo of the game from that one is this one captured by our lead photographer, Liv Lyons. You can see the Kraken players coming out for warm-ups in those Pride jerseys. All of them don their jerseys. There's no controversy with the Kraken here, unlike others there around the league, such as James Reimer, who claim religious beliefs, which is a bunch of baloney, which you can see, is that Ryan Donato? Yeah, Ryan Donato there, who is very open about his faith, and he was able to put the Pride jersey on. So, don't use religion as an excuse. But what's a key layer here, and I want to give a shout out to my friends. You can see the thank you for celebrating Pride sign. That's my friend Ray and our friend Caitlin to the left. The way we're looking at it, to the left, but it's their right. So a shout out to Ray there and our friend Caitlin as well. It was really cool to see this, the Pride jerseys as well. If you saw me get up earlier, I've got the pullover that they were selling from that. So that was nice to see. I know there was a lot of worry that one of the Kraken players might not come out in the warm-ups because of all the same bull crap that was happening around the league where players decide to not come out in those. It's been called out already on Twitter. I don't need to go into it further. But as someone who considers himself in that community, it was very important to see that representation and a big sigh of relief to not have to worry about one of the players not coming out. I'm in those warm-up jerseys. It's 15 minutes in a jersey. You gonna burn? Come on. Anyway, we'll get to the past games here. So the Kraken lost that one. They go after playing the Stars for 2 games in 3 days. They headed on the road down to San Jose for the final time to play the Sharks. They would win that game in overtime. It was frustrating that game even went to overtime. Philip Grubauer played great. The offense just couldn't beat, ironically, James Reimer at the time until overtime. And Seattle even trailed this game late. Seattle gave up. Seattle had a penalty shot called against them. I think it was a rookie for San Jose who scored. Vince Dunn was able to score the winner in overtime. He is one of our players of the game here. 1 goal, 1 point, a 2+-, 3 shots, 1 hit, 1 block, and 1 takeaway, extending his point streak to 11 games. Another player of the game, Philip Grubauer, for his excellent game to really keep Seattle in that one, to keep that one within striking distance. 969 save percentage and 31 saves on the day. That one, again, that was a game against San Jose. San Jose is a bottom-feeding team, and I don't say that just to make a sort of aquatic pun. But that was not a game that that San Jose should have been in, and it was kind of frustrating that was even something that we had to worry about. And then wrapping up, March 18th, Seattle returns home for a key divisional game against the Edmonton Oilers, who have been on a tear in the second half of a season, and they would lose that one 6-4. They were in that really up until the third period, and then the Oilers were able to pull away. Our player of the game, forward Ellie Tolvanen, 1 goal, 1 point, 1+-, 1 shot, and 2 hits on the day. Our photo of the game from Liv Lyons here, the fight between forward John Hayden and Klim Kostin. I say fight, but if you're able to see it, it really was Hayden and Kostin just kind of spinning each other around. It was like a tilt-a-whirl. I would have thrown up personally. And then when they fell down, Kostin fell on Hayden, and then Hayden limped to the locker room and didn't return to the game with a lower body injury. So that was just messy and unfortunate all around. That was just ugly. We go to our player of the week here. I know he's been at a couple of times now the past few weeks, but with the way he's been playing, it's hard to not pick Vince Dunn again and the point streak that he's on. Vince, over the last week, 1 goal, 3 assists, 4 points, a 4 plus minus, 8 shots, 2 hits, and a block. His point streak reaches 12. It remains both a franchise and personal best. It is the longest active streak in the NHL. That streak makes him the 9th defenseman in the past 20 years to record a run of at least a dozen games, according to the NHL's PR. So we have to have a talk about this because this is becoming a problem. These are key games for Seattle. You're obviously playing a Stars team. Tomorrow they play a Stars team. They play that Stars team again 3 times this month. That's really solid offensively. You should have beat them arguably in that first game that you played them. That second one was just ugly. The fact that you struggled like that against San Jose, you had a slow start in that game. Your finishing has been unfortunate. In that Oilers game, too, you were in it, but your own mistakes were at fault. Your own mistakes continue to be at fault. That's been the case for the past 2 years that this franchise has existed. We got a comment on the blog post again by somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about, unfortunately, who said we have bottom of the league goaltending. And now I know that this person in particular has called out Philip Grubauer, but Martin Jones sucks. Martin Jones has been bad these past few weeks, let alone past few months. He had the good November, a little bit of the December side of things, but has been poor ever since. He looks slow. His reaction time is bad. He's been given clear lanes to see the puck and has not been able to make the saves. His rebound control is off. He's not very quick in the crease. It's a problem. Martin Jones is a problem. And so any idea or thought that Martin Jones should be with this team next year was outlandish and just wrong at the time when those claims were being made back in December, January. And if there's anybody still clamoring for that now, they're wrong. Philip Grubauer has been the clear starter since the year began, the 2023 year began, not this season. He's had a little bit of a struggle to begin the year. Colorado game was good and has been pretty damn good since that Colorado game. It was just wild to see, because again, Martin Jones was signed because of the injury to Chris Driedger. He was only ever meant to be a stopgap. It was a 1-year deal. He was here to be a veteran guy that they could use when they weren't starting Grubauer. He's looked really bad, man. He's looked very bad. So if that comment that we got on the blog post was talking about Jones, you're right. According to Money Puck, in terms of goals saved above average, he is the 15th worst goalie in the NHL. So the numbers back it up as well. So throw away the win-loss record because that's not a goalie-specific stat. You shouldn't measure a goalie by that mark. It's been bad. And, that doesn't excuse the defensive issues as well. Seattle's defensive issues, there was one goal against the Oilers where both defensemen were up against the wall on a play, and they left Edmonton wide open in the high slot. Both defensemen should never be on one side of anything, let alone both on the wall. So, these continue to be mental mistakes that Seattle makes. Some of it's just bad luck. Like there was Connor McDavid's goal technically went against, I believe, Will Borgen's stick. There was a game a few weeks ago where the game-winning goal actually went off of Will Borgen's stick. I'm not calling out Will Borgen. This is just stuff that's unfortunate. Some of it you do have to tip the cap. The first goal against Grubauer in that game against the Oilers was bad. Yes, it was bad. But we've broken this down before with the photos as well. Your defensive issues continue to be a problem. And while the Vince Dunn has been great, Adam Larsson's been solid, really, really solid. Will Borgen's had a pretty solid year. Jamie Alexiak's doing better in terms of his offensive production. Justin Schultz has been a solid veteran. Carson Soucy's had his moments as well. You're going to need to get at least one new defenseman this offseason. You'd like to lock up Vince Dunn immediately as soon as the offseason begins for Seattle or whenever that's available. I don't think that should be a question. We've already talked about that in weeks prior. But some of these guys should not be back. Plain and simple. just because of the way that things have gone, and you want to continue to be better. Maybe that's with Riker Evans coming up. Maybe that's via free agency or via trade, but Seattle has to get better defensively. Simply has to get better. Calls for a new goaltender are bizarre. One, you're not going to move Philip Grubauer. One, because he shouldn't be moved. Two, because that contract's immovable. Chris Driedger, that's an interesting topic to talk about in the offseason. But Driedger easily, as soon as the organization deems him ready to play at the NHL level, Martin Jones. It's like the big cartoon hook on the stage. It's got to go. It's got to go. It's simple. I'm sorry. It's not a question. So, I'm sorry. I had a clip here for Pride Night that I skipped of to talk about the games here. So, just a really quick clip that we got from Team PR from Pride Night, just to show off them with the jerseys here. Really quick. Yeah, so that was kind of cool to see. But we don't have any league-related... Oh, no, we do have injury news. Pardon me. Yeah, that Oilers game was tough for a lot of reasons, just because you lost. Edmonton gets a few points lead on you in that third place spot in the division, and it got some injuries from it. So on the 18th, Philip Grubauer left that game against the Oilers due to a non-COVID illness. It was originally designated as a lower body injury, and then later in the game we found it's a non-COVID illness. And as a result, today the team called up goaltender Joey Decord in a emergency loan capacity. So that was really interesting. I've never personally seen an emergency loan. We continue to learn about the game of hockey. I apologize. I'm not a genius at it. But it doesn't. I have to wonder what it is. Maybe it's the flu. But with the emergency loan capacity, it makes me think that they're just being cautious in case they need to have Joey Decord available. But it also tells me that they don't believe Chris Driedger is fully ready yet. They want to continue to get him games down at the AHL level with the Firebirds as they continue to go there. So, yeah, that was tough to see. But the other thing, too, in that game against the Oilers, forward, as I mentioned, John Hayden left the game against the Oilers due to a lower body injury. So you had two guys out there. They both were originally designated as lower body injuries. Grubauer then changed to a non-COVID illness. I haven't gotten an update on Hayden, and no technical update on Grubauer, but with the move for Decord, that kind of gives you the update that you need to an extent. So a little bit to read there. We look ahead for our Kraken here over the upcoming week. This is a big upcoming week, as I mentioned. Edmonton is in third place in the division right now. They currently hold that spot, and they have a couple points lead over Seattle. Seattle has the first overall wildcard spot in the Western Conference, but they only hold that by 2 points ahead of the Winnipeg Jets. They stood at a 38-win, 24-loss, 7-overtime loss record, which is good for fourth in the Pacific Division at 83 points. But again, they occupy that first wildcard spot only by 2 points, though. So if they continue to slide, the playoffs could be very well in jeopardy. Now, this upcoming week is very key for that. March 21st is at the Dallas Stars. Seattle has not beaten Dallas this year in their first two matchups. They get a chance to do that, but it's in Dallas's house tomorrow, Tuesday the 21st, at a 5:30 p.m. puck drop. And then Seattle heads down to Nashville for 2 games. Now, Nashville is also in this race as well for one of those wild card spots. So, I mean, you're in a wild card spot right now. You would ideally like to be in one of the top 3 spots in your division. But in order to do that, you're going to have to buckle down and man the F up. March 23rd at the Predators is a 5 p.m. start. Seattle gets a day off, and then they play again on the 25th at the Predators, which is an 11 a.m. start. Again, Nashville is about... So the first 2 teams in the wild card make it, and then everybody else is looking in. Calgary's looking in right now. They're a few points out. They've been struggling, and then the Predators are looking in as well. So you have to take care of business. You have to come away, I'd argue, with 4 points from those 3 games. I'd argue that, Seattle's been road warriors this year. They're going to have to do that this stretch, especially with teams that you're dealing with who are sitting in playoff spots in the Western Conference. So that's something to note there, and it's a little bit worrisome. So we move over here to something that's not worrisome with our OL Reign, who finished up their preseason tournament in Portland at Providence Park. 2 matches here to go over. March 15th versus Racing Louisville FC. 2-0 loss, unfortunate. But again, that group against Racing Louisville was heavily rotated, so a lot of players coming in and out against Louisville. No players scored there, so it's shutout. No player of the game. March 18th at the Thorns to finish up that preseason tournament, a 1-0 win. Our player of the game midfielder, Jess Fishlock, with 1 goal from that there to give the Reign the lead that they never gave up and close out that tournament with a victory. So we approach the regular season here. We've got that preseason roster. I'm not entirely sure when we get the regular season roster to open up things. We'll have a season preview article on that here within the next few days. We should have that. But no, I mean, it should be exciting. It'll be really interesting to see when the World Cup comes along, how the Reign are able to mitigate that, what players will be able to step up in those moments, where certain players might move in terms of position-wise. But you've got largely a good amount of the same group returning. You've got new additions in Elise Bennett, Emily Sonnet, Shea Holmes, and Natalie Vigiano via the draft. Will Mackenzie Weinert make a return after being left off that preseason roster? So, there are some decisions to be made. It's tough considering the fact right now that the Reign don't have a general manager. But at least, if we look at things, the Reign should be good again, and they could very well defend that shield. But it won't be easy. It certainly won't be easy. Kansas City, fully healthy, should be a dangerous team. A lot of these teams getting back up to full strength will be very important, and that World Cup stretch will be a big, interesting factor where some players on this roster will need to step up. So we look ahead here on the 17th. The team released their Purpose kit. Now, fun story on the media day that the Reign had a few weeks ago. They were obviously shooting, taking photos in this for media-related things, whether it's the league or the Reign itself. The Reign Originals and Lou Barnes, Jess Fishlock, and Megan Rapinoe had these on by the time that they brought them over to us in media, and so to cover that up, they all wore Renaissance-like garb, so that was kind of funny, but I could see the sleeves on it, and I got a glimpse of it initially. But the Reign have their new Purpose primary kit. It will take over for the former kit, the Hope kit. You're going to go through some photos here of that kit. We can see, rotate through that here. And we'll bring that statement up, but we'll continue to rotate through these photos. The ones outside that you can see here are all by Jane Gershovich, and then the ones that are in red, I believe Jane and Lydia Brewer both worked on those. I want to say both, but I know at least Lydia Brewer was involved in that as well. So we're going to look here, get that statement for you on the Purpose kit. So the theme of the Purpose embodies the player-driven culture established at the Reign since the club's founding and is designed to capture a sense of place and in the environment that defines the Reign. Aligning the design with the Reign's mission and values, the kit and its standard design symbolizes the bold mindset and dedication to advocating for the community when it comes to things like sustainability, social justice, the empowerment of women, and LGBTQ plus rights, to name a few. I know that Lou Barnes had a pretty heavy involvement in the design of this as well. So worn with pride, representing Seattle, it's got that geometric pattern inspired by the landscape surrounding the Reign in the Pacific Northwest. It's adorned with that red stripe on both sides. See if you can find it. There we go. That's a perfect pick for it. Obviously, that Nike swoosh. As you can see on the front, it will feature the black. Well, I show this one, and then it doesn't have the front on it. We'll go that one as well. The Black Future Co-op Fund feature on the front of the primary and secondary jerseys until such time that the club secures a new presenting sponsor. Oh, so for the time being, a partner of the Reign The Black Future Co-op Fund serves as a critical catalyst for change in the club's community, investing in areas that are underserved and underappreciated in an effort to elevate the community in a more equitable place. As Washington's first Black-led philanthropy, they directly provide more resources, collective power, and support to Black Washingtonians, a mission that the Reign supports deeply. We will finish up the photos here. Sam Hyatt, and then Fallon Joyce donning the keeper kit version as well. So that's really cool to see. I know this is probably outside of the purple and neon kit that they did when they were the Seattle Reign. This is probably the most unique design that the Reign have had on a kit. I like it, personally. I like it. I wasn't sure how I felt about it when I saw it initially at Dead Media Day, but I like it. I think it's good. I think it looks pretty solid. And it's got more sort of, I don't want to say this because it sounds stupid. It's got more flavor to it in a way. So I'm a fan of it, but that's that. So looking ahead, the Reign have their first match of the regular season, the NWSL opener, March 26th at the Washington Spirit. So they begin their season on the road. Ignore the little thing on the bottom. March 26th at the Washington Spirit is a 1 p.m. Pacific time start. It's a big one there on the road against Washington. You know, Washington does still have some talent. There might not be the same group that won it all a few years ago. But still, you know, this is a new season, new opportunity to represent. So we move over here to our Seattle Seawolves, who had the week off, so there was no games there. We do have a piece of news, though. On the 14th, blindside flanker Charles Elton was named into the league's top 15 best performers of Week 4, with 13 tackles made, 32 ruck arrivals, and 78 meters run. Elton, I believe did continue to lead the league in tackles here. We can double check to make sure if he does or not, but I know that with the bye week for the Seawolves happening, they got passed in the standings because they didn't play, and so likewise, Elton could have been moved past in tackles as well, but we'll double check to make sure on that. Made tackles, yes. So now he's fallen down all the way down to 4th as Jan Adrian Buisen sits at 78 while Elton sits at 68. So yeah, the bye week kind of hurts that, but Seattle will have plenty of opportunity. But Rickard Hadding still leads the league in tries scored. Isn't that kind of funny? All right. But so that is it for our Seawolves here. They sit at a 4-0 record still, 17 standing points, which puts them now at 2nd in the league and 2nd in the Western Conference behind the San Diego Legion, their arch rival. Next week, the Seawolves go on the road to play the Chicago Hounds, March 26th, with a 1 p.m. start. Chicago, the newest expansion team that's currently playing in the MLR. So that'll be an interesting match there to see how Seattle stacks up with Chicago. We go over to our Seattle Sea Dragons here, who have now won 3 straight and are looking much like the team that a lot of people were hoping they would be when this XFL season started. So they played, at the time, the 4-0 Houston Roughnecks, Seattle winning that one 21-14. Our player of the game, I would have gone with the whole defense, and you still could argue that I would. Excuse me, but I would go with defensive end Nico Lalos. Lalos only 3 tackles total, but he did have the game-sealing interception on the final drive. Houston was making a bit of comeback, and with the way that the XFL does things with the 3-point, 2-point, and 1-point conversions, Houston could have walked it off. But Lalos gets the game-sealing interception. The defense played lights out. They shut out Houston, which, as I mentioned, had gone 4-0 in the weeks prior. Hold them to 0 points in the first half. The Seattle struggles with turnovers again, unfortunately. But the defense was able to hold you in the whole game. The offense was able to take care of, do just enough effectively. And the defense was able to close the door. So that was a big win. I mean, Seattle's won their last 3. They beat a 4-0 Houston team to prove that Seattle's really, it's a real deal. I've got my Sea Dragons hat finally, so that's nice. No, I mean, this is continuing to look like the Sea Dragons team that a lot of people had hoped they would be. The turnovers continue to be an issue, and until they figure that out and they're able to minimize that, it'll hold back their potential. But they've got one of the best offenses, if not the best offense in all of the XFL. You know, with Ben DiNucci leading that receiving core, Morgan Nelson led the league in rushing yards for a good amount of time. Brendan Knox is a solid runner, is a solid downhill runner. And that defense has played really well the last few weeks. If, you know, again, they can cut down on the turnovers, this team arguably is the best team in the XFL. And you look at those first two games that they lost in D.C. and St. Louis. In D.C., they fumbled on the goal line, which would have been the game-winning touchdown. Against St. Louis, they had the lead and they blew it to give up a late field goal. So you could argue that this team should be 5-0 had they cleaned up their own mistakes. But that's not how it goes. We're now about halfway through the regular season. And so you just got to continue to build from here. But cutting down on the turnovers is obviously a really big key. So we'll look over here to their next game as the Sea Dragons sit at third in the XFL, 3-2 record. Their next game is March 25th at the Orlando Guardians, which is a 10:30 a.m. start. Yes, 10:30. You heard that right. That game is 10:30 a.m. start. But 3-2, Seattle, with a win, has a chance to move up to second in the division. We move over here to something that's a little bit different. I don't know how many people follow cricket, but Seattle will be getting their own cricket team. They are called the Seattle ORCAS. If you saw that, take a look at that really quick. And then we're going to go back to our Seawolves. Take a look at the Seawolves logo in the bottom corner. They're very similar, just a little bit of a problem. But Seattle will have their own official cricket team. It's Major League Cricket. The team will partner with the Delhi Capitals co-owner GMR Group to bring quote-unquote world-class cricket to the Pacific Northwest. The Seattle ORCAS will leap into competition in their historic debut season so Major League Cricket is brand new this summer. It's only a 3-week round-robin season. The newly named team will represent the greater Seattle area and Pacific Northwest. The new league will bring some of the world's top players to compete in a sport that boasts millions of fans in the U.S. and its second most watched sport globally with more than 2 billion followers. The team unveiled its logo and team name back on the 16th. The mark honors, quote-unquote, the Pacific Northwest's beloved orcas, considered a symbol of power and strength. Again, this looks a lot like the Seattle Seawolves logo, so it's a little bit unfortunate that they're so close to that. While Seattle will not host any matches during this upcoming season, as I believe the entire league will be playing down in Texas, the team, along with Major League Cricket, is working with King County and the city of Bellevue to build a cricket community park that could host up to 6,000 people for future home games. Other international cricket events. It's going to be a 20-acre facility, would be in Miramore Park in Redmond, a few miles east of Seattle, with the Redmond City Council passing a motion of support for that development. That'll be, Redmond. We'll try to make it out to those games. But yeah, I was kind of pushed heavily to follow this. They are a pro team, so it is something to note. We'll try to see if there's any more key information for you here. Their other teams will be Texas, Los Angeles, New York, San Francisco, and Washington, D.C. They will begin July 13th with the 2023 Major League Cricket Championship final set for July 30th. The Pacific Northwest, quote-unquote, with a league from Justin Gill, the MLC tournament director, is a hotbed for American cricket with a vibrant youth scene and the current reigning Major League Cricket champions. Seattle Thunderbolts, hailing from the area. It's going to be exciting to see the Seattle ORCAS build on that platform and compete in the inaugural Major League Cricket Championship. So that'll be interesting. And there is a intro video, 22-second intro video from the ORCAS here. So it'll be interesting to follow cricket. I have to admit, it's going to be a learning experience, but we've got until July, effectively, to figure that out. So it's plenty of time to figure that out and get to it. But we do have our first crop of players for the Orcas here. So we'll go over the draft results, which took place on March 19th in round 1 with the first overall pick. Yes, the first overall pick in the draft Seattle selected Harmeet Singh, who is an all-rounder, age 30. The left arm spinning all-rounder was part of a 2012 India U19 World Cup winning side and has captained the Seattle Thunderbolts, as we mentioned, the minor league cricket side that won the championship last year, to the 2022 MILC franchise T20 title. He was just taken first overall by Seattle. In round 2, Seattle selected Shihan Jayasuriya, a batter, age 31, a quick-scoring left-handed batsman and a right-arm off-break bowler. He was born in Colombo and attended the Prince of Wales College, Maratua, and he won a gold medal in 2014. In round 3, Seattle selected Shubham Ranjani, an all-rounder, age 28, who is a former Seattle Thunderbolt. Round 4, Cameron Gannon, an all-rounder, age 34. Round 5, Aaron Jones, a batter, age 28, played as a batsman for the U.S. national cricket team. Round 6, Nauman Anwar, a batter, age 27. Round 7, Fani Simhadri, a bowler. I said batter. Okay, I thought I said bowler. It's bowler. I can speak, I promise. Age 31. Round 8, Angelo Pereira, a batter, age 33. And then round 19, Matthew Tromp, a bowler, only age 17. So, as I mentioned, with that being in July, it'll be really interesting to see the way that it all broke down, cricket breaks down. I still have a lot to learn about that sport. But we're going to wrap up here with our star of the week, and I went with Seattle's free agent signings for the Seahawks. Again, there's a lot of impact players here for Seattle that are on the table that they've included, and obviously Dre'Mont Jones on the front there. As Seattle looks to build off of a team that exceeded a ton of expectations in 2022/23, with the season ending in 2023, and made the playoffs, and a lot of good young talent, including last year's draft class. So if Seattle can maybe, even if they add more to this free agent signing class, as well as have a great draft class in this year's selections, Seattle could be looking at going much further in the playoffs than they did last season. So that's it. We've got an exciting week upcoming for you, obviously, down in spring training. We'll throw that back up there. Exciting there. That'll be obviously our main focus. But again, with spring approaching, all of our teams are really starting to get closer and closer into kicking into full gear. The Seahawks, obviously are working through a free agency. The Mariners are going to wrap up spring training. The Storm are still kind of getting ready for the season. The Sounders are in full gear. The Kraken are fighting for that playoff spot to secure that playoff spot. The Rain will begin their season over the upcoming week. The Seawolves return to action, looking to continue their 4-game winning streak to begin the season. The Sea Dragons are on a 3-game win streak. So till we see you next week from Peoria, take care of yourself, be well, and do whatever you can to make today a great day. Thank you.